Hi, in this video, you're going to learn how to approach part 3 of the IELTS speaking test in a structured way. We're going to look at what these questions are really designed to do, why they're asked, what kind of language they're trying to elicit from you, and how you can use that to your advantage. If you've ever felt unsure how to begin your answer or how to go deeper in part 3, this video will give you a practical structure that you can use every time. So let's get started. Before we go deeper, let's just remind ourselves what actually happens in part 3 of the IELTS speaking test. This part lasts around 4 to 5 minutes, and you'll be asked between 4 and 6 questions, and they're always connected to the topic from part 2. But these questions are abstract in nature. You're not talking about your personal experiences anymore. It's about ideas, opinions, and sometimes even broader social issues. That's the general setup. Let's now look at what these questions are really trying to test. Part 3 of the speaking test is designed to give you space to demonstrate your ability to use advanced English and to think critically about more complex topics. While obviously everyone gets these questions, they're especially important for students aiming for higher bands because this is where the test starts to measure high level language and higher order thinking skills. Here, you're moving away from personal experiences, you're talking about abstract ideas, social issues, general trends. Part 3 is where you get to really show the range of your grammar and vocabulary. It's not about speaking more, it's really about speaking with structure and precision. Part 3 questions are not random, they follow certain patterns, and each type of question is designed to bring out a specific kind of language or thinking. This means that if you can recognize the type of question you're being asked, you know what kind of answer is expected, what kind of language you should use, and what structures to aim for. We'll now go through the most common categories of part 3 questions. And just a reminder, you'll find all of this organized in a worksheet that you can download. And the worksheet lists these question types, gives you example phrases, and show you the kind of structures that help you score higher. Make sure you have that PDF open as we go through the rest of the video. The first category is opinion/evaluation questions. These are questions that ask for your personal view or ask you to respond to an idea or someone else's opinion. For example, you might hear something like, do you think it's better to live in a city or in the countryside? Or some people say young people today are less respectful. Do you agree? What matters here is giving a clear opinion and supporting it. You might say, personally, I believe that living in a city offers more opportunities, or I agree to some extent, but I think it depends on the context. So you see, the question is designed to get you to express your opinion, and that's exactly what you need to do. In English, as in any other language, there's certain expressions and language structures that we use when we want to give our opinion. That's what the question is aiming for. Next, we have comparison and contrast questions. These can be about comparing two things in the present or about how something has changed over time. For instance, you might get, how is education today different from the past? Or Are families closer now than they used to be? These questions are great for using comparative language, like more than, less than, the same as, but also narrative tenses and the present perfect to show change over time. So you might say, compared to the past, education now has become much more technology driven. Or families have become more spread out, especially in urban areas. So, in this category, you're showing not just difference or similarity, but also development and contrast over time. Then we have future prediction questions. These are designed to see how well you can speculate and talk about possible developments. You might hear a question like, how do you think people will travel in the future? Or what changes do you expect in the workplace over the next 20 years? Here, your language needs to reflect that you're not talking about facts. You're talking about possibilities and different levels of certainty. So, future tenses, modal verbs, expressions like, I think it's likely that, or will most probably see, or there might be a shift towards whatever. The fourth category is cause and effect, and it often includes problem slash solution questions. These questions ask you to explore why something is happening, what effects it's having, and in many cases, how it can be addressed. For example, you might get, why are people becoming less physically active? Or what can be done to encourage healthier lifestyles? These questions require logical explanation. You might say something like, this is mainly due to people spending more time at their desks. Or one possible solution would be to make gyms more affordable. Some useful language here could be, because of, as a result, this leads to that, or one way to solve this might be, and so on. Check the PDF document for more. And finally, there are hypothetical questions. These ask you to think of an unreal or imaginary situation. For example, if you could live in any country, where would you choose? Or what would happen if public transport were free? You are probably now thinking second conditional, third conditional, mixed conditional sentences. So you'd say things like, if I had a chance, I'd live in Canada, or it would probably reduce traffic if buses were free. So you're not describing reality. This is important. You are imagining, you're speculating, you're thinking creatively. And that's exactly what these questions are testing. So those were the five main categories. And what's important for you to understand is that each one brings out a different kind of thinking, a different kind of language. So, if you can recognize the type of question you're being asked, you have a much easier time planning the right response and choosing the right structures to support your ideas. And again, please don't forget about the worksheet. It has all of these question types listed with phrases and sentence starters that you can use while practicing. All right, so now that we understand what these part three questions are trying to do, now that we know why they're written the way they are, It's time to talk about how to answer these questions. And here's the key idea. You're going to use the exact same structure that you use to write a body paragraph in an essay. That's right. Every time you respond to a part three question, you're basically building a spoken paragraph. If you were to write down everything you say, it should look like a clear, well organized paragraph. So here's the structure you're going to follow. First, make your point. Directly answer the question you were asked. Take a position, say what you think, agree or disagree, choose one side or stay in the middle. Just say it. Then explain what you mean. Just imagine somebody asking you, what do you mean? Why do you think that? What's your reason? What's the logic behind your opinion? This is where your answer gets a little bit deeper. And finally, give an example. Illustrate what you're saying. Use something concrete to make your answer more specific and relatable. That's it. That's the whole structure. And again, it's exactly the same structure you use to write a paragraph in an IELTS essay. Point, explain, example. It works beautifully in part three because it helps you avoid going off topic or saying too little. So, whenever you get a part three question, just think, what's my point? How can I explain it? And what example can I give? So, now the big question is, what do you do with all this information? You know the different types of part three questions, you know what kind of language they're designed to elicit, and you also know which grammar structures work well with each category. And that really helps narrow things down because you don't have to study everything. Now you know exactly what you need to focus on. The first thing you can do is to start working with lists of functional language. These are practical phrases and sentence structures that are useful for each question type. You'll find these in the worksheet. So again, download that worksheet. And when you practice answering questions, just keep the list in front of you. You see use of expressions for giving opinions, comparing things, talking about hypothetical situations, giving reasons, and so on. Keep the list in front of you while you're trying to uh, come up with an answer. The second thing is to start applying a clear structure when you speak. Answer the question directly, explain yourself, give an example. Every time you get a question, practice giving your answer in that order. This will also help you with writing, by the way, because you'll be training yourself to think in paragraphs. And you'll be using the same structure that you need for writing body paragraphs in task one and task two. One more suggestion I have for you. Start reading consciously. What I mean by that is don't just read for information. Whether you're reading model answers for IELTS writing or speaking, or you're reading articles, essays, or anything from a textbook, start noticing what's happening with the language. Pay attention to how ideas are introduced. Notice how the writer moves from one idea to the next. Ask yourself why they've chosen a particular tense or why they've used that structure in that specific sentence. I'm not saying you have to analyze every sentence, that would take forever, but from time to time, stop. Pick one sentence that you find interesting or effective and take a closer look. Ask yourself, what's the grammar here? What's the structure? How do they express this idea? Because that's how you extract useful language. And when you do find a phrase, a sentence, or any good expression, write it down. Put it in your notebook. Keep a record of the language you want to use. That kind of conscious reading, where you're paying attention to language, is one of the most powerful things you can do to improve your language. So let's quickly recap what we've learned in this session. You now understand, hopefully, that part three questions are not random. They fall into specific categories, and each one is designed to elicit certain type of language, advanced grammar, higher order thinking, and generally a more structured way of expressing ideas. You've also learned that the best way to answer these questions is to treat them like you're building a paragraph. Make your point, explain your reasoning, give an example. That's the structure, simple and clear. And one final point, especially for those of you who experience test anxiety or feel really nervous during the speaking test, having a structure to follow can make a huge difference. When you know what to expect and you know how to respond, you reduce stress. You're not improvising everything on the spot. You've trained yourself to think in a clear pattern. What do you do now? Well, you start practicing. Get familiar with the question types. Again, use the worksheet. Practice giving answers with structure and train yourself to notice how language works when you read or listen.